I see no objections. The agenda is approved. Are there any objections to the minutes? I see no objections. The minutes are approved. I'm going to hold off on discussion for now. Go to new business. We have Kurt Holden today to discuss the incident that happened on Friday.
So my name is Kurt Holden. I'm the Director of Public Safety here at Wright State University. And I was asked to come and speak with you all about the incident that occurred at the hangar on Friday. So before I get into the facts of what occurred that day, I do want to say that everybody's emotion about what they believed or thought was occurring was very real, and it's been validated, and I understand, and I also am here to support you. Now, I want to get to the incident. So on that day, 11:15, an individual, registered student, was walking in Allen Hall. That individual entered into a unlocked ROTC lounge area where they found a completely inoperable, it's a singular mold rubber ROTC training rifle, and had taken that to their possession and walked into the hangar. While in the hangar, reports told us that the individual was asking questions whether they believed it was real or fake. We heard reports that the individual was kind of acting off, a little erratic, and some people even began to question state of mind. The individual became kind of agitated from what some of the reports were saying, and that they lifted this rubber rifle above their head and said that, "I believe this firearm is real." At that point, a lot of individuals ran out of the student union because, again, I want to say that it's very real. You know, the Oregon district was real. What happened at Michigan State University was real. In this instance, I can understand why individuals may have thought at that current time that this could be what was occurring. I know there was a lot of individuals sending text messages or putting things out on Twitter, but we were lucky to have, one, our police department's now right there. Two, we had a dispatcher that was right there, and officers were on scene within seconds. The officers assessed it extremely quickly and placed that individual into custody immediately. We were ready to put out a Wright State alert. The Wright State alert was ready. However, when the officers were there on scene, they quickly assessed that it was not an active shooter incident. And if we would have triggered the active shooter alarm, that would have raised even further public safety issues across campus. That same day, there were 2 false alarms at Troy High School. Troy High School, some of those students actually were running out of the schools and trying to climb out of windows. This was not an active shooter incident. I know individuals have came forward and told me that, hey, I went and ran and hid in this classroom. I went and did this and this. And I want to say, you did the right thing. You believe that this was that. And I will not invalidate that. That's a very real feeling. And you did everything right. But we should be grateful and fortunate that it was not that incident. We have over a dozen witness statements that say that the individual made no threatening remarks, did not make any threatening gestures at anybody. That is why there was no threats when the email came out. These are not downplaying anything. And I think what's going on is that there are what the officers assessed immediately and the facts, and then there is what individuals were thinking was going on, and both are correct. If you think there is an active shooter going on, you should run, you should hide, you should seek shelter. But that doesn't take away that the facts here are also correct. And so that's why I'm here to make sure that both align that, hey, what you felt was very real, you did the right thing, but it was not that. We're very fortunate in that. The individual is currently trespassed. The individual was questioned by police, was arrested, was charged for inducing panic. We are currently working with the prosecutors for additional charges. As it relates to, I know people have had questions of, is the person expelled? Is the person this? Well, I don't get into student conduct issues, but what I will say is this. If an individual was trespassed from campus and an individual was arrested, we're very smart people. I think you can do the math on that. Okay? I'll be more than happy to take some questions.
Did you have any interactions with this person prior to the incident?
Yes. Yes, we did. We had, I want to say two other interactions that our department has, not me specifically.
And did anything come of those incidents?
What do you mean by that? I'm sorry.
Like, was there any warning that something like this might have happened, that something could have been prevented?
The individual, well, I can't get into some of those specific incidents because I would be in a public setting, putting some personal information out there. But as it relates to interaction with this individual, specifically telling us that he was going to find a rubber rifle in Allen Hall and walk into the hangar, no.
You said that you guys didn't have enough time to send an alert because you responded so quickly. Why wasn't an all clear sent to let students know that it was safe?
So this was an isolated incident. So Wright State Alert is usually used when there is a threat or ongoing threat to campus utilized. So for example, you all have seen some of those emails come out about how there was an armed robbery next to campus and that the individual was at large. Well, that could potentially be like an ongoing threat because the individual just robbed somebody and that the police haven't had him in custody or she in custody, right? And that they could be on our campus, and so that would be an alert. This specific incident, officers were there immediately and realized from of course witnesses in the area, from their own observations, that this was it was not a real firearm, it was a rubber ROTC training marching dummy rifle. It was found down the hallway in an open lounge, not secured where it should have probably been. And the witnesses in the area that stuck around said that there was no threats made towards anybody specifically, and that the individual didn't say any specific threats towards anyone specifically. So there was no ongoing threat. Now I know that's been a question that I've heard a few times from a few students, but when these incidents do occur, we always look at our emergency operations plans. We always look at finding ways to do better and be better. And so what we are currently doing now is that we are looking at what we can do in our Wright State Alert for an interim message. So for example, if there was something like this to happen again, we could put out an interim message, something along the lines that police are dealing with an incident here. Please ask you to stay away from the area for the time being. And so that's something that we're currently putting in place now because we actually do multiple tabletop exercises a year as a university. And this is one of those things that we've seen that we might be able to look at because we hear what's being asked, and that's something that we can easily put in place.
Vivian?
So I know I personally got a lot of questions from students around campus about what happened, and I'm not sure what information to give out. So what information would you advise us to tell people, and what information would you advise us not to tell people?
Everything I told you this evening, you can tell people. So I know that I was very quick to get in front of the media. We talked with the media, I think, within an hour afterwards. The media, I know, has a job to get people to click on reports. And so I spoke with the media. I think I spoke with 3 different news crews, and I did tell them that there was no threats. I explained that it was an actual dummy rifle. I explained that there was no active shooter incident that was taking place. So I did explain that. I know in some of the articles that is laid out in some of the news releases. But I would ask that you all help us get the word out that we are getting, we have always been serious about safety. This just goes to show that we are still very serious about safety. I do want to add that the students that stayed in the area to offer up statements, thank you. That was courageous, that was brave, and that was awesome. I also want to, take this opportunity to say thank you to you all leadership getting in front and asking me to be here, and then also thank you to the police officers as well, because they responded within seconds. And so I just wanted to make sure that we acknowledge those individuals, and then also those individuals that did run and those individuals that did hide. I'm here to validate that. You thought it was something, and you did everything right. And if it ever was something at a movie theater or something across town or something like that, which I hope never happens, you should do exactly what you did that day, because you did exactly what you should do with what you thought it was.
Alicia?
So I understand that there wasn't any real lives at stake, but there were still people that thought their lives were at stake. And they still ran away, some of them hid in closets, in cabinets, some barricaded doors of classrooms that they were in. So I understand being apprehensive about putting out a Wright State alert because it wasn't a threat, but at the same time, there were people who did think it was a threat and they didn't find out until much later. So they were trying to be quiet and they were distressed during that time, and they didn't get that relief anywhere for quite a while. So is there a possibility that in the future, even if it's not a threat, if there are people who are genuinely scared and hiding, if there can be an alert set out explaining that there is no threat, it is over, it is safe, so that way they don't have to continue barricading during their class times?
Absolutely. So that's what I was just mentioning just slightly earlier, is that I've talked to a few students, and I know that was something that was kind of asked, like, can we do something like this? And so what we are currently doing is putting that specifically in place. I've talked to a few students that said that they were at UC, and at UC they get an alert like every week, they said, and I was like, oh, that must be scary. And so I kind of told them that this is something that we are actively putting together now. But I also want to say that we have the capabilities, so I want to emphasize this as well. We have the capabilities that if there was an active shooter, we can trigger an alarm immediately all across campus. We have the capabilities, and we could. At any moment, it will come over the intercoms, it will send out immediate text message. The reason that was not done was because this was not that. So I just want to just kind of make that aware to that we do have the capabilities. If something was to happen, we have those capabilities.
Kind of along those lines, I just wanted to ask, what is the standard protocol if there were to be an active shooter on campus?
Standard protocol would be immediately an alarm would be pressed inside our dispatch system. That would immediately trigger all local law enforcement agencies, not just our department, but Fairborn, Greene County, State Highway Patrol, Beaver Creek, Fairborn, Yellow Springs, Dayton, Riverside, probably Wright Pat Air Force Base, Special Forces Police would probably come. Everybody in the area would come. Every single person, and then our officers are specifically trained. We had trained multiple times a year with, of course, this. I know Wright State Newsroom did a story on that to where we do joint training exercises over at the Calamityville. We do that yearly, and our officers are not trained to respond as a team. They are willing to go in and put their lives on the line as a single officer and not wait for backup, because that's how much they care about this community.
Vivian?
One thing I was asked to ask tonight is for the students that were in the hangar at that time, what they faced was extreme trauma. So my question is, why were classes still held after that incident, and why weren't students allowed to go to their dorms or to their houses? And I ask this because in Troy, on that same day, they had 2 false alarms. However, after the second one, it was really early in the day, and they were all sent home. So my question is, why did that not happen here?
So Troy had 2 false active shooter alarms. We didn't have a false alarm on an active shooter. We had an incident that some individuals thought was going on. It was a small portion of course, campus that was aware. If we would have triggered an alarm after knowing that it was not an active shooter, we would have put the community at a great public safety risk because we knew it wasn't that. As it goes for those individuals that are still going through that experience, I know that the university is doing everything it can through counseling and wellness services. I know that through CWS, if of course they're not getting the resources they need there, our CWS team and our Department of Psychiatry and our Department of Counseling and our Department of Social Work all got incredible resources and networks within the local community that can further connect students. So I do know that we have a team here at Wright State that's actively engaging with students that are going through that. And so I'd encourage the communication to have those students continue to seek those services. But as it goes for canceling all of school, one, I don't make that decision, but 2, I don't believe that that would have been the right decision.
Alicia?
With that said, I understand not canceling all classes of the school at the time, especially with it not being real. But there were some people that did go home right away, and there were some people that, again, barricaded their classrooms because they didn't know what was going on. Some might have fled. Is there ability to raise awareness for professors of certain classes of those to allow an extra excused absence? Because a lot of courses have where you can only have 2 and then you have to drop out.
So, I am not faculty, but I would definitely, and of course your position as student leaders, reach out to those students, reach out to those professors, and begin building a plan. Because again, we're a community, and again, I think what students felt during that time is very real. I validate that, but I would also hope that the professors would also help with that plan, along with university administration, CWS, public safety, and kind of help bring people back to a place to where they feel good.
Sorry, Provost Thompson, I'll just add to that. Immediately after that, there was an email that came out that we announced if students needed to have counseling, that there was immediate walk-in services available. Also connecting them with, for example, Destiny Biesmeyer. And so that, if you know students that are still experiencing issues or having problems, I again would encourage them to connect with Destiny, because she, in essence, is an advocate for our students. And so, those can be conversations that Destiny can have with faculty members and kind of be an intermediary between that. So if those issues are happening, she can help work those out.
So she's able to work with, is it guaranteed that she can get professors to give people an extra absence if possible?
I think she's very good at making sure that the faculty know the situation, if there needs to be, assistance made or, accommodations. Those are things that are part of her daily job. So well, I don't want to make a commitment. I mean, that's something she does on a daily basis. So everyone's aware of the situation. I think faculty are certainly aware of the situation and, you know, some of the perceived trauma that occurred that day. So absolutely.
Provost Thompson, along with that, something I was hearing from students is because of the recent turnovers in counseling and wellness, many of the students felt like they could not go to counseling and wellness. And I just want to kind of ask how that is being dealt with.
Yeah, sure. So we have had some turnover, right?
Yes.
And I think we talked a little bit about that. We have a brand new director that's starting in mid-October, and Chris can speak to that. We have another individual that is also starting October 2nd. So those two positions are filled. And then we already are advertising for 2 other positions, right? So everything is being fully filled. There's been some turnover happening in the counseling center. And of course, you know this, we've made sure that psychiatry is fully staffed there. So we also have had a record high in terms of students who are seeing patients in CWS right now. So in terms of continuity of care right now, it's not an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Another question that I wanted to ask is, a lot of students have no idea what this person looks like. Is there going to be some sort of image sent out so people can be aware of what the person looks like? And also, what will the police department do if he were to come back on campus, or even worse, come back on campus with a real gun?
Okay, so that's a few questions. So I'm gonna try to digest that and try to answer the best. So I want to reiterate that he didn't bring this like rubber training rifle to school. He didn't bring this onto campus. He was in Allen Hall. He entered into an unsecure lounge and seen a left out rubber training rifle. He didn't bring anything to school. He didn't bring it from his dorm. He didn't bring it from his car. He didn't bring it from, you know, anything. So he actually found this out and about that anybody could have found. As it goes to putting on a picture, that would not be appropriate of us. But because he, you know, was arrested, there is public record out there. So if that's something that you all want to look for, that is completely up into your authority or power. If of course he returns to campus, he's currently trespassed, he will be arrested on site.
And just one more question on my end. What is being done about the room that he entered to secure it, to make sure this can't happen again?
So there's already conversations with ROTC. ROTC is changing some of their protocols and tightening up some of their protocols. Sadly, this was an accident, and it turned into what some lived as a real nightmare in the moment. And those emotions have been validated. We are working on better messaging and of course the intern to co-sync with our actual words to maybe be kind of more like a notification type system. But ROTC, they are working, you know, on that, and I believe that they've already got some things in place immediately.
Kate?
So somebody online just asked, why is he released?
Because inducing panic is a misdemeanor charge, and a misdemeanor does not hold you in jail, you know, until the end of time, sadly, right? But that's actually a good thing because, you know, because a misdemeanor shouldn't hold you in jail for life. But it is a misdemeanor charge. We are currently working with local prosecutors to see if there's any additional charges that we could, of course, have. But I know the individual does have court dates and things like that. That could lead to even a higher sentence.
Alicia?
So you said he was banned from campus, correct? And he would be arrested on site?
Yes.
So Following that, because the email was super vague, and a lot of people are confused, and that just makes them feel more scared, honestly. Is there a way that we can put out communication to the students about this individual is not able to come back on campus, so that people who are scared of him coming back with a real gun or whatever it is can know that safety and that sense of security and can feel solace in that? Is there going to be a statement put out about weapons that aren't allowed on campus and the reprimand that will happen because there's some people who are scared of people bringing weapons on campus and threatening people with them, even if they're smaller ones, and what is Wright State doing about it, and how will they react to it, because we don't know the outcomes of this as students. We don't have the privilege of those details, but if we got those details, it would make a lot of people feel more safe.
And I think that's a very fair question. The reason that the email may have appeared to be vague was because there was other messaging going out there from social media and things saying there was an active shooter. That was completely false. But what we did have was, an alarming incident that officers immediately addressed within seconds. And so to put out an email about the individual being trespassed, I think, again, certain things that are vague are because we can't talk about them at that time because it's under investigation, and of course it would actually hurt the investigation, okay? It would hurt the integrity of the case. But as it relates to putting out, he's being trespassed, he is this, he's this, that's what I'm doing right here tonight. That's where you all could help, do that. Of course, that's what you choose to do. We as a police department have trespassed many individuals, and we don't put those emails out because, again, there is some protections, in place, and we want to make sure that we don't do anything that would put ourselves, you all, or the university at any type of litigation.
Alicia?
There's a lot of students who are not going to be able to see this meeting tonight, and they may not know about the recording. Only a percentage of students will at the end of the day because it's word of mouth and it's advertisement. Is there a way to put out that sense of security and those details where people can feel safe to the whole campus? Because there's always people who are left out. I know, for example, my graduate school, our program never receives most campus emails, is not aware of most resources on campus. We have never been made aware of them. I'm only aware of them because I'm on here. And so it'd be nice if those people who don't know about these resources, don't have access to these resources, are able to see that it is safe now and get that confirmation.
Yeah, I would love to sit down with your entire leadership team and come up with a plan. I know, and that's when I talked to two students today, myself and Captain Norman. We taught a QPR class. We have over 100 safety educational programs that I engage right now just for the fall semester that can help educate individuals on what we do as a department, why we do things as a police department, what we do to educate, all those types of resources and things like that. And so I would love to help with a plan. Because I know that they asked about, do you even teach Run, Hide, Fight? Do you teach this? And we teach Run, Hide, Fight twice a week. We teach it virtually, we teach it in person. We also teach it upon request. We teach QPR, which is a suicide intervention program. We teach Narcan. We teach, an overview of what we do as a department. We will do whatever we need to kind of promote the information about what we do as a department, why we do those things, because that's one thing that I want people to know is what we do and why we do it, because that's why we're here.
Are there any other questions from SGA before I open the floor to the public? All right. Someone in the chat said, I work in athletics and no one at the Nutter Center got an email until 2 hours later.
I don't know why that would be the case 2 hours later. I know when the notification went out, it went out from our communications team and went out. I don't know the exact time, but I can definitely tell you that the button that communications used to kind of send that mass notification out wasn't 2 hours. Doesn't mean they didn't receive it 2 hours. I can tell you that that was a notification. Now our Wright State Alert goes immediately to, and that's where it goes on the web page to your cell phone, to Facebook, to Twitter. That's a Wright State Alert. This was a notification email. But like I said in the beginning, we are working on something in the interim for that notification to be, a little bit more quicker for you all to have. That way, you all feel more comfortable about what's going on.
All right, I'd like to open the floor to the public. If you can just raise your hand, I will call on you and you will be recognized. Nate?
Am I addressing you or him, or am I asking questions or
You
free
can,
form?
if you want to ask a question to Chief Holden, you can.
Okay. I guess if I go on a bit, I'll just trust you to cut me off. My name is Nathan Harriman. I wanted to start by saying I have nothing to gain by being heard or in the spotlight. While I'm here to advocate for myself, and my fellow students, and my fellow fraternity brothers, I'd rather be anywhere else than here tonight. If I sound uncomfortable, it's because I am. I got very little sleep last night. I've been pretty close to this situation since it started. I brought with me tonight the first email that I sent to the Wellness Committee that was sent on September 15th at 10:29 a.m. That's that Friday morning. I was aware that the individual was in a rough state of mind. Also had knowledge that he was not taking prescribed medications that were prescribed to him by his doctor. Me and the other people involved were very worried about him. When we heard that he was walking around campus on the morning of Friday, someone reached out to us, and one of my friends was going to campus to check on the individual, and I told that friend, call the police, don't approach him, don't talk to him. That friend called the police, and what I was told is that the police spoke to the individual that morning, and the report afterwards was that he was normal, he seemed fine. And then of course, after that, I was advised to inform the Wellness Committee about what I knew, because we felt it was valuable that people high up were aware of what I was aware of, because not many people were. And that email went out 45 minutes before the individual walked into the hangar with a training rifle. I have that email here with me. I sent another email on September 18th. This was after the individual showed up to Wright State and was escorted from Wright State to my residence. There's no forewarning given, or no texts or emails. No phone calls were given to me or any of the residents there. The Wright State Police, I believe along with Fairborn Police, showed up with the individual saying the individual told them that I had told him he could stay there for the night. That wasn't true, that was a lie. Basically, what transpired was the individual had nowhere to go. I suggested he go back to the place where he was being held initially after his first, I guess what I would call psychotic break, which occurred on August 31st, which he was subsequently, the facility he was in after that, he got released from. And I told him, you need to go back there, it's the best place for you. And the police informed me that I could take the individual to that facility. And so what we did was, my roommate went with me. I drive an SUV. I drove in the front in the driver's seat. The roommate sat in the middle row seats, and the individual sat in the very far back row. That was so that if the individual made a move for the steering wheel or me, the car wouldn't crash or anything like that, but that he would get to the roommate first, and I would have time to pull over and intervene. I love my roommate. He's close to me, and it breaks my heart to have to say that. But given the situation of the night, we felt that's the best we could do. Anyways, the rest of the night goes on, and we ended up taking the individual to a hotel and getting him a room for the night. The hotel was near where he was having a court hearing the next morning. That night I sent another email to the wellness committee, also CCing Sue Edwards. I was then invited to a meeting with Officer Holden. I was very happy whenever I got that email. I felt like I was being heard and that we could finally make some progress. So I was very happy to show up for that meeting and speak to everything that I knew. I will say right now, there's no way I could verbally reiterate everything that I know or have in the papers in front of me, so things feel left out. I just couldn't, I'd be here for hours if I was explaining everything. So at noon on Monday, I met with Officer Holden, and I went into that meeting feeling tired, yes, frustrated, yes, but when I left the meeting, I was livid. I was livid at the fact that I just spent about 45 minutes talking to a man who has been tasked as the leader of the organization that is responsible for protecting the safety and well-being of students at Wright State, who mainly seemed interested in one thing throughout our whole conversation, shutting me down and wordsmithing me into agreement with himself about the events that took place on the night of the 17th. And Wright State Police's involvement with those events. There's a couple points. I made it a point to write down the entire conversation, call it the diary I wrote that night. It's basically just a transcript. We started talking about the previous night's events, and he addressed a concern I had in my email from the previous night. The concern was, why had Wright State Police taken a known offender to my house in the middle of the night? He answered this question with a lot of logic, which I agreed with. He said that the individual was already talking about making his way to my residence, and if they let him go, he could very well end up there and cause another panic. They thought it better to drive him there and be present when he arrived. I accepted this. Now, whether or not the individual could have found my residence is one question, but I will let that go in favor of the idea that the WSU police genuinely wanted to be present for a meeting which could otherwise be very scary. Ironically, the police presence made zero difference, as I'll explain. In that meeting, I then asked Officer Holden why they didn't bother to call anyone at the residence and tell us they were coming, or at the very least, ask us if what the individual told them was true. The individual told them I had said he could stay at our place for the night. That's a lie, that wasn't true. Officer Holden never responded by saying that they messed up or that they should have called. He gave me a long-winded explanation about how calling the resident of the address a known offender is being driven to is just not in the protocol. I got very confused at this point. Why was the chief of police telling me that a major detail, like calling ahead, was overlooked because it wasn't part of the protocol? Aren't police officers trained to think and operate in otherwise abnormal situations? Aren't they the ones we trust to make wise in the moment judgments? Anyways, Officer Holden seemed fine with resting his case upon the idea that his officers only do what is written down for them in protocol. Leaving that topic, he leaned in and slowed down his speech as if talking to a child, which is exactly how I was made to feel at many points in our conversation. He leaned in and said, "Nathan, I want to assure you that if you had said that the individual wasn't welcome at your residence and that you wanted him taken away, the officers would have complied and taken care of it, I assure you." At this point, I was starting to see the game in front of me, and whether it was for my own amusement or to implicitly say, "I see what you're doing," I leaned in and spoke slower. "Officer Holden, within a 30-second window of time, I went from eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich while watching Family Guy to standing at my front door in my pajamas looking at several police officers who who weren't telling me what to do, with the individual looking at me explaining that he has nowhere to go for the night, and then having my roommates behind me in the doorway saying he couldn't stay there. Do you think I was in the frame of mind to be sorting through which civil rights I had available to me that would prompt the officers to take the individual away? The officers did approve of us going back to the facility that the individual was initially at, and I asked why that facility was not made aware of my arrival with the individual. I personally spent several minutes walking around that facility with the individual searching for an entrance, wandering through construction sites alone with someone who 24 hours earlier caused a mass panic at my school with the fake assault rifle. Officer Holden avoided this question, and to be honest, at this point it was becoming tiring. I was asking very simple yes and no questions, and he was giving me anything but yes and no. I guess that by losing me in a trail of words, he thought I would mistake quantity for quality. I also asked why the WSU police sent me to that facility, knowing there was no guarantee that the individual would be admitted, and that I would subsequently be left with a dangerous individual at night with nowhere to go for help. Again, I was met with a very long answer. I never found out why they did what they did. I have just a couple more points. Sorry for being long-winded. Holden told me that typically when someone is trespassed, they are simply asked to leave the premises, and the officers present don't concern themselves with where the trespasser ends up. Officer Holden then told me we had a spidey sense that something was off with Jeff and that he might not be going to your house for a good reason, so we thought it best to take him there and be present during the interaction. This statement was hugely appreciated. The discussion up to this point was very tense, and I was in need of some comedic relief. I responded through stifled laughs, "Are you telling me that your guys had a spidey sense about the guy who walked onto campus with a gun not 36 hours earlier, causing a mass panic, and thought he might not have the best intentions in going to my residence that night?" I will also note that Holden was good at pointing out technicalities so as to belittle what I was saying. When I said phrases like, "the individual walked onto campus with a gun," Officer Holden would respond with, "No, he took a training rifle 200 feet from our ROTC training room and walked into the hangar." When I asked why the police didn't offer an escort to the facility, he responded with, "I'll say it again, they were not allowed to take the individual to the facility. He was not under arrest." In the latter example, Officer Holden uses the tactic of hiding a misstep behind an established truth. Yes, the cops could not legally detain the individual and force him to go to the facility, but that in no way stops the squad car from following me as I drive the individual who volunteered to go with me to the facility. Present at that interview was, I don't know her official title, I can't remember, but Destiny, Health and Wellness, she's with them. She was there for the whole thing. It was not just me and Officer Holden in the room. If people, for whatever reason, either don't know me well enough to take those statements seriously or don't believe it, you can talk to her. She seems like a really nice person. She might not be as curt as I just was, but I'm sure she'd agree with me on which side of the coin we're talking about. And the last thing I wrote, again, I was just writing my thoughts out later that night. I said, "Destiny and I stepped outside and down the front steps." This was after the meeting. She said, "I probably shouldn't say what I'm thinking." "What are you thinking?" I replied. "That felt disingenuous." That was her response to me. The last thing I'll say, because again, I have absolutely nothing to gain from a spotlight. I would rather be talking about anything else, anywhere else tonight. I've never been very much into activism or politics. I prefer to focus on the here and now and on things that have to do with direct self-improvement. The one topic I have always been adamant about and have never doubted as an opinion and a conviction is that any man, woman, or person wearing a uniform deserves the utmost respect. The fact that there are men and women and people in this country that are willing to put themselves on the front lines and protect civilians is one of the things that I find miraculous and redeeming about living this life. I judge Officer Holden for his words and actions towards me personally. While I respect his badge and his uniform and what it stands for, I don't respect the way he handled that meeting. I acknowledge the faults of memory and would not be surprised if my above sequencing is off or if there are elements added, missing, or substituted. But assuming that his body camera was on, I would absolutely love to pull the footage and rewatch it. If anything, it would be more impactful, and I'm confident it would ring true with the spirit of what I just wrote. I don't have any questions.
So, thank you. Me and Nathan did meet. Me and Nathan did meet for about 45 minutes. I won't get into the details of it. It does sound like he may have a formal complaint of some kind. If that's the case, I do encourage him to file a formal complaint. And then that would be looked into, not by me, of course. We would bring an independent party to look into that. And, but I do want to say that our officers are incredible professionals. I do want to say that our sergeants are incredible sergeants. Our captains are incredible captains. And because they're so incredible, I'll stand behind and I'll stand on my reputation that they make me an incredible chief. So, thank you for that.
First, I want to thank you, Nathan, for being comfortable enough to bring this to SGA. We've heard you and we want to validate you. Officer Holden, we thank you for coming and explaining what has happened. We thank your whole squad for everything that you did on Friday, and we appreciate what they've done for us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do you want to proceed to new business? Any additional new business?
We postponed the resolutions for next business,
Right.
but we do have discussion on first year seminar to be part of the Gen Ed requirement
Right.
with Provost Thompson.
Before we go into that, there's a lot of students who are in the public. Are there any final words that you guys would like to say at this time before we move on?
Vivian?
I wanted to thank everyone who is here with the public. I know that took a lot of courage to say that, so I wanted to thank you. And
about concerns with CWS and the lack of support for students in that place. Is this?
Yeah.
Okay. I personally have been with CWS, I've been using their services since I came here as a student, my freshman year. I know initially when I first came to campus, I applied right away. I knew that was something that I needed. This was in 2019, so of course it's been a bit. But I know that I did not get access to services until spring semester. For me, that was okay because I was able to handle that. I think that's unacceptable for someone who needs actual assistance. Upon returning to campus, I refiled and was able to get in much quicker, which I appreciate after that I came back to campus. Unfortunately, my therapist has left the CWS services. I'm fortunate enough to be able to go to an outside resource. I have insurance that can take care of that and that can handle that for me. I worry for students. I know many of our many of our therapists have left, and I know that that's not necessarily something Wright State can control, of course, but I'm worried for many students who would need assistance, especially rapidly. I personally do not believe there is enough support for CWS. I understand there are people being hired. Again, they don't start until October, which is still half a month away. Again, of course, there are time and processes for that. But I think this problem was allowed to go too long, and it was allowed to get too big. And I personally find that unacceptable. That's my statement.
Can I address that? So, and Chris, please feel free to jump in. So, a couple of things. The turnover has just been recent, right? So just so that you know that, and I absolutely agree that we need continuity of care. As of right now, we don't really have a wait list. Is that correct? I mean, to your point, absolutely, we need to be able to meet the care needs that we have. Right now, as we're waiting to hire those other positions, we do have staff on campus, faculty who are actually coming in and seeing students as well, in addition to the students that are in the clinic as well. So right now, we do not have a wait in the counseling center. So I want to be clear about that there is not an unmet need right now on campus. I just want to make sure that I clarify that. Becky?
And thank you, Alex, for bringing that concern to us. We will definitely be working with the mental health task force to make sure the needs are continuing to be met. AJ?
I have a question for the provost. Concerning the psychiatry services that you mentioned earlier, I'll be honest, I have taken advantage of those services in the past. Sure. I've used those. But I was told that they would not be continuing for this semester, and I was completely taken out of the system. I was not given warning. Yeah, I wasn't given warning, and not much concerning resources outside of Wright State. What happened with that? Was there a miscommunication? And what is actually going on with the psychiatry services?
Sure. I'll let Chris address that.
Sure. I'll check with Dr. Mask, who's in charge of psychiatric services. My understanding was messages did go out with referrals, so I will check. And if I have your permission, I will mention your name specifically.
I did receive emails, like an email after a final appointment with other services in the area. It's not possible.
I'm sorry?
It's not possible.
Okay. All right. Well, they are back, the services. But I also talked to Dr. Mast about what gap there may have been there.
Alicia mentioned
Was there, because there was a lapse in services for legal reasons, was there ever an email sent out to those students, any information about that lapse, and if they were allowed to come back once it was over?
I'll have to check with Dr. Mast on the reconnection of that. The one I know went out initially, but on the reconnection, I'll check with Dr. Mast on that.
Siobhan?
This may be for Dean Taylor or Provost Thompson about the CWS services. I utilize them, and I was told that there was a limited amount of sessions with a total of, I think it was 4 or 6, somewhere around there. And I was wondering, is that going to change? Because with mental health services being so difficult to come by, it's kind of hard to transition to something outside. So is there any cushion that can be provided for students?
Yeah, I believe that was instituted last spring, and I don't know that we're doing that right now, what the plan is for this session.
So right now, we're looking at securing additional services for mental health. But to be honest with you, most universities have a model where they'll see students for a certain number of time and then refer out to the community. So we'll connect the student out into the community for continuation of care. And again, that's the model at many universities, just because for us to have a continuing client load, we would never be able to probably have the resources in place to be able to just continue to grow and grow and grow our client load. So it's really like a triage service. right? So that's a model that many places utilize.
I have a question about the emergency telephone service. Is that contracted out or is it with Wright State?
The 24/7 number,
Yeah.
it's contracted out.
Yep.
Okay, because I have had to personally use it and I was hung up on.
Okay.
And I luckily had support there with me, and I can't imagine if that happened to someone that didn't have support, what it could lead to. So,
Go ahead.
so just since we're on the topic, that was something that I wanted to bring up.
Anytime when we hear about that
Yeah.
at the university, we address that with the company that we're hiring to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vivian.
I wanted to reiterate what President Stephanie just said. I am an RA on campus, and I've had 2 residents who live in campus housing tell me that exact same thing, that they have been hung up on by reader cares. And that is just a statement. But I do have a question. So for a lot of people that need therapy and psychiatric care, some of the reason why they can't do it outside, like an outside provider, is because of funding. If problems with CWS come up in next semester or future years, is there any contingency plan for students to get the help that maybe can't afford that at all?
So I hear you, and I recognize that. Obviously, any student enrolled here would have to have health insurance, right, as they would with any other issue. And so that's something we can continue to look at. One of the things that we're seeing right now, which is good news, and you all know how important mental health is to me, right? And we certainly can look at applying for funding and perhaps look at things like money for co-pays or other things as we move forward. I think there's lots of opportunities for us to look at access to services as we look at, we can't have, this huge client base in a continuing way on campus, but what are some ways that we can try to look at meeting needs out in the community? So I think we can look at that, and sometimes we have emergency grants too that can help students for things that, if they're in need. So I think that's something we can continue to look at and pursue.
We're also in touch with 2 clinics in the area that have sliding scales for that exact situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quick reminder to SGA members, please unmute your mic when you're talking. Siobhan.
It's kind of a follow-up to my first question. Could there be some kind of continuity plan or transition plan for students who are getting towards the end of their sessions to go outside for outside services? Because I've had 2 students who have told me that even the healthcare that the university provides, health insurance, sorry about that, it's not, it doesn't cover mental health resources off campus, the Blue Cross Blue Shield. I believe it's.
Yeah, CVS stuff always works with people to transition if that's what's happening.
Okay, because in my personal experience, I was kind of just dropped out to just kind of just find out on my own, and
So I just want to be clear so I can understand the problem. So you're saying when you hit your max, they did not help transition you at all?
I actually had an appointment scheduled with a psychiatrist, and I got a phone call saying that the psychiatrist was leaving, and we can possibly come in for today, last minute appointment, or that would be it. So, okay, yeah,
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for that feedback. And, as we're ramping up now the counseling center with basically all new staff, I think this is an excellent time, for us to make sure that that transition occurs and that training occurs. That's the goal, is for them to make sure that there's a seamless continuity of care. Absolutely.
Alicia.
While you guys are here, I'm just curious, what is the plan for obtaining a long-term supervisor for all the interns? When will they be expected to arrive? Because we just have a temporary one right now we're looking at.
For which interns are you speaking about?
The,
SOPP?
yeah, the SOPP interns.
I can answer that. They've been, well, the people doing the supervision right now have been contracted for this semester, and one of the folks we're going to hire will be a psychologist.
Okay.
Yeah, that position is actually posted right now.
Are there multiple people who are being interviewed right now?
Well, the post just went up 3 days ago, so there will be, certainly.
Hannah?
In regards to the postings that have been put up for the positions in TWS, is there a specific note looking for multicultural awareness and training with these individuals? I've heard several struggles in the culture and centers of students going to TWS as students of color with unique family structures that are common in cultural communities and having struggles due to the lack of multicultural awareness. And so I was wondering if moving forward in the future, if those points that we were looking for in people we are hiring.
We do look for that, and additionally, they do training within the center on, therapeutic things through with diverse communities.
Okay, I'm gonna put a cap on that discussion. Provost Thompson, do you want to continue on?
How are we on time, or do you want to do it next week?
Whatever is best for you.
Okay, why don't we wait till next week? I
Okay.
think that's probably better.
I appreciate you coming.
Yeah, of course.
Next, we have our university reports from our advisor.
I think for the sake of time, the only thing I was going to say, I think already in the announcements, family weekend begins Friday night. Most of the events are on Saturday. And yeah, that's it for now.
Our faculty report. Dr. Donapathy.
I don't have particularly any report, but I just had emailed Stephanie about thinking on teaching time blocks that we currently have. It is nothing that we need to take an immediate decision on, but I would like from the student government to look at what are our current teaching time blocks to see if there's any room, like any suggestions of room for improvement, and we want to look at it from a Senate to see how do we provide more flexibility in scheduling that especially supports the current teaching needs.
Absolutely.
It's valuable context, at least in my opinion. I didn't walk into that meeting at noon on Monday with Officer Holden at all planning on talking here. I probably wouldn't have even known this was going on if I hadn't been in that meeting, honestly. If I'd walked into that meeting and he had said something along the lines of, that shouldn't have happened, I'm sorry, we're gonna do better, and we'll CC you on that process. Being a leader of my own organization, I've been on the other side of the table many times, and that is the response that I've given when it comes to being held accountable as a leader. Many times I've had to sit there and listen to the person across from me give me complaints that weren't my fault or complaints that I didn't like to hear, but I've always been taught in my time in my organization that leaders are supposed to take accountability. And the reason I spoke so long here tonight was because I was very frustrated and I was very disappointed that as the student organization leader, a 22-year-old, I was walking out of the meeting that I had with a 40-something, I don't know what his age is, but I'm guessing 40-something-year-old in a uniform who took an oath, and I'm the one who's unimpressed. I just wanted people to know I didn't want to be here.
We totally understand. And we thank you for coming.
Yeah, that's it, thanks.
Announcements, I'm gonna, they will be in the agenda in the minutes. We will save that for now. The Rowdy Bobblehead Award, Ryan.
Let's go with let's go with Alicia. Alicia's done a very great job so far.
Thank you. Great
figurative speech.
Right. Are there any objections to adjourning? I see no objections, this meeting is adjourned.